This is Tim Castelli, and as Rodney had mentioned, our speaker is Randy Pensabene, and she'll be talking about drought-tolerant native Texas plants. Just a little bit about Randy. She's the past president of the NPSOT Williamson County Chapter, and since joining NPSOT, she's taught native landscape certification program classes, managed the chapter's native plant sales, and also assisted with demonstration gardens. She's also helped create the chapter's newly launched native Texas plant database for Williamson County, wilcoscape.org, which sounds like a huge but a great project that she's undertaken.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for showing up for me. I'm Randy Pensabene, as you found out. Get myself straight. Okay, minor panic. Nothing works like natives for drought tolerance. You live in Collin County. I live down in Williamson County. I'm just north of Austin. So Central Texas. We see, if you can see my cursor, I think you can. I'm right down here. And we deal with drought quite a bit in our area. So this is a good topic for me. But as many of us know, turf grass is just a water guzzler. And when you compare the amount of rain it takes to sustain non-native turf grass, that's like 60 inches a year. And I looked up Collin County, and you get 40 inches a year. In Williamson County, we average about 30 inches a year. So anyway, you need some native plants. This doesn't mean you have to take out all your grass, but you can keep a few areas, figure out what you really need. If you have expansive lawns, there's a lot you can take out. And I've been doing that for about 20 years in when I moved to this house. And it's been a journey and a learning experience. So what is a native plant? What does drought tolerant mean? It means it'll survive once it is established. You can't just throw the plants in the ground and then say, oh, they're drought tolerant, they'll make it. So you have to keep them watered for a while. And at the end, I'll tell you a suggested watering plan. And then understand that drought tolerant doesn't mean it's always going to look its best. At times, it's going to need a little extra water, especially during a severe drought. But otherwise, it'll survive. And sometimes that survival may include dropping its leaves or just drooping them or even going fully dormant. And then it'll rebound after it rains and resume its normal cycle in spring. And if you do have a severe drought and you think things are not coming out in the spring, be sure and give it enough time. I have people all the time ask me, they go, oh, my plants aren't doing anything. And I say, well, it's only been warm for a week. So, give it a little more time than a week and wait to see. If they've really been hurt by freezes or drought and they die back to the roots, it'll take them a long time to put back some green growth. Water saving traits and strategies. There's a couple things they do. The plants have been adapted over the years to grow really deep roots. This happens to be a buffalo gourd. I'm not sure that would do well in your area, but this is a root off a buffalo gourd I had in my garden. I used it as a ground cover in shade, and it was really fun to have. But the root got so big, it was actually laying across the top of the ground more, very shallow. So I ended up taking it out. And you can also reduce the water use by reducing the sun exposure. And it drops its leaves, as I said, or goes fully dormant. That's redundant. Okay, some more critical adaptations. The plants have evolved to have really tiny leaves. A lot of full sun plants have smaller leaves, and your more shade plants will have larger leaves. And the silver and gray leaves will also reject sun by reflecting it, and the hairs actually reflect the sunlight as well. But they also slow down air movement, so there is less transpiration or evaporation. And then leathery, shiny evergreen leaves have a nice waxy coating, and aromatic compounds, the oils, help reduce water loss. And then some more of the interesting plants have water holding and storage structures. So that's kind of fun. Native grasses, these have some serious roots. These roots are extremely good at erosion control, and they can withstand extreme drought. They, again, this is one that may or may not look its best without extra water. And I will get on to the Indian grass because this is one that actually likes medium water. That's when it looks its best. But in Blackland Prairie, I'm on a Caliche side of Williamson County. We have Caliche in about half the county, and then we have the Blackland Prairie in the other half of the county. And this is over at my friend's house, Gary's, and he is in Blackland Prairie, and just a beautiful stand of Indian grass. But it's very drought tolerant. He does not have an irrigation system, and he does not really water. So, in fact, I don't know that he waters at all. And it's very drought tolerant, and it's one of the big four prairie grasses. And it really provides some nice nectar for the insects and looks well in a landscape, but it's also good at naturalizing. And this is Cytodes grama. This is our state grass, much smaller grass. It's about 2 feet tall, pretty bunch grass. This is in a garden on the right at a place that we did a demonstration garden, but you can also let it seed out and go crazy in real nice growing conditions. It'll be sod forming. And it is at the bottom picture is up at the Native Texas Park at the Bush Library. And the seeds are really nice for the birds. And it's a larval host as well. So your grasses are important larval hosts. Oak trees have some serious tap roots. I was surprised when I looked at the plant list information that Tim had sent me for your area. And there's a lot of overlap between your area and Williamson County. These are all oaks that grow in our area. They're also recommended for your area based on the documents I received. The acorns, of course, are relished, provide a lot of protein for many mammals and birds, and then as well as provides a home for them. But the best part of it is all the caterpillar species that the oak trees provide. But I see oak trees all over the USA and all over the world, in fact, in other countries where I've hiked and gone and visited. The oak tree is there. So you know it's a survivor, and it's very, very tough. And so everyone should have an oak tree in their yard and support the wildlife. Deep taproot. Our milkweeds also have a very deep taproot. And the green milkweed is what I've found best in my area. It's a nice upright, looks a lot like the antelope horn, except with a wider leaf and a more upright look, and also a little more drought tolerant. But even if they go dormant in the middle of the summer, I have the antelope horn may go dormant, but I'll have it come back at the end of summer. And Zozotes has always got the most interesting flower, but these are good drought tolerant plants. Turk's cap. I want to point out on Turk's cap that the native variety is Malvaceous arboreus variety Tremundi. The nurseries carry a lot of the Big Mama and the giant pink one. And this is because, people go in a nursery, they see the plant and they go, oh my goodness, this is just, what I want. So they buy it. But you really want to search out the native plant if you want a true drought tolerant plant. The other one is not native to the U.S. at all. And in fact, it's where where was I going with that? Anyway, seek out the native one. It's not as drought tolerant, and the native one is a little smaller and a little tougher. And this plant has very big leaves, and that should tell you something about a plant. If you try and put this in full sun, you're going to have to pump a lot of water into it. You'll see it in commercial landscapes in full sun because they are pumping water to it every other day or so. So it does better in shade. It blooms in shade, and we're always looking for good shade plants. So put it in part shade to shade and let it do its thing. It is, and you'll see a ton of especially hummingbirds. It's a great nectar plant. And then the little fruit that it gets is good for the wildlife as well. Wine cup. This is an interesting one. If you look at it, it likes full sun. It likes part shade. But if you see it out, it's just got these little tiny leaves and these beautiful purple flowers. And you wouldn't think there's much going on there until you look underneath the ground and see these giant tubers. So this one is also very drought tolerant. It'll take some water. So it's a good one for a rain garden. It's not a problem. As well as the Indian grass would be great in a rain garden because it can take low water or it can take a lot of water. But this one is also a larval host, and it'll make a nice ground cover mat, and you can mow it and it'll start blooming low to the ground. And so it's a very good ground cover. Pale yucca. Now, in our area, all the nurseries sell the blue twist leaf, they call it, which is a cross between the yucca pallida and yucca rupicola. And rupicola is in our area, and actually in our area, there's an overlap of both species, and we get a lot of crossbreeding. This is a natural crossbreed. So if you see a blue yucca, you can also plant that. But it has very tough leaves, very thick, leathery. It's a little bit gray. Pallida has gray leaves. And so it's a very low water sun plant, which is very nice. And in the spring, if you plant them, one bloom is beautiful. Each plant usually gets a couple of blooms. And then if you plant a mass of them, it's just stunning. So this 5-foot bloom stalk, but look at that tuber underground. I had to dig deep for that thing, and it actually stores water in those tubers. So this is another way that plants become drought tolerant. This one won't be listed as drought tolerant when you look around and if you look it up. Cooper area, Tremundi is what's in your area. And these are modified stems, if you will, but they're underground. These bulbs underground, and then the roots go out, but the bulbs will store water. And so it actually is quite drought tolerant because it will survive a drought. It only comes out during the rains. So otherwise it's dormant, and that's how this plant survives, which I find very interesting. And you can let it naturalize in a flower bed. You can let it naturalize in your lawn because they don't last that long, and you can mow over it. American beautyberry. This is another gorgeous plant, and the says it's medium water, and it is for the most part, but it'll do low water as well. I have it in caliche, and there's very little soil. Mine down there is the picture on the bottom right is mine in my garden, and I let it grow naturally. You can cut it off at the base and then let it come back, and it'll be bushier. But I like the natural arching branches. But it does this interesting thing during the day. If it gets too much sun, it'll droop its leaves. And a lot of drought-tolerant plants will do that, though, will actually droop the leaves. And it doesn't mean that it needs watering. It just means that it is trying to collect less sun. So it's collecting less heat. And it's also collecting less or transpiring less. So it just droops and it looks fine. And then in the evening, it'll perk back up. And it'll look fine the next day until the sun becomes too much for it. So that's another interesting way it loses less water. This is Texas green eyes, low water. I put it in too much sun and didn't realize it. So it's getting some afternoon sun, and it will roll its leaves up and block the sun. It will in fact roll up the little petals on the flowers here. And that's pretty interesting. I'm in the process of moving it to another location because I love it so much. It's really gorgeous, and it's about 4 or 5 feet tall, and it is just covered in pollinators all the time. Extremely drought tolerant. This is one that goes dormant in the heat of the summer. This is another way your native plants survive our heat and our droughts. It blooms early, and then it will defoliate during the heat of the summer. And you need to plant it in shade, part shade. Needs to get a little bit of light, but put it in. I planted one in a demonstration garden, and everyone kept coming by thinking it was dead, and they would break it off, and the landscapers would cut it off, and that kind of thing. So be careful if you use it. Use it somewhere that you have control, so that people don't keep thinking it's dead. But it's very another fun, interesting way our native plants survive our droughts and our low water and our heat. Partly skullcap, I really love this one. You have to appreciate that it covers a lot of ground and it gets real big in spring. But it's beautiful in the spring. It's got flowers all over it. The pollinators are going crazy for it. Even hummingbirds and butterflies, all of them. In the summer, it's going to go completely dormant. So when all your other plants are up and producing, this plant has died to the ground and is out of the way. As soon as it starts to get a little bit cool and you start getting some rains, it's going to come back as a beautiful gray-green ground cover that's only a few inches tall. And it sits there all winter as a nice ground cover, protecting your ground. And then in the spring, it will shoot back up and bloom, and just a beautiful, beautiful blue bloom. This is Black Dahlia, another extremely drought tolerant, very low water. Looks beautiful, makes a nice mounding shrub, but it's also nice, besides just as a specimen, it's nice as a mass planting if you want to. But the magenta, the flowers in the fall, and in fact, it's flowering right now. And at the top left of that picture, you can see Zexminia. It does very well with that one as well. Another way that plants survive our droughts is they have developed water storage capabilities. So our cactus store the water in the leaves. And then on the far right is a manfreda, which also stores, and it's got thick, fleshy leaves. So it's a great nectar. Also has a bloom, but it's a great, great one for drought. Dwarf palmetto, you may ask why I put this one in here as well. This one loves medium water. Of course, it's adapted to the swamps and whatnot, but is surprisingly drought tolerant. I have it in the front of my yard where it gets, when I planted it, it was in full shade, but I had a tree die, and so now it's in full sun, afternoon sun at that, and it does great. It does fine. It's very drought tolerant. It even blooms, it gets seeds, it does everything. The leaves, during a severe drought, the leaves will get a little bit brown at the tips, but other than that, it's fine. It doesn't care. And the blooms are interesting. They're very small white flowers. That stalk you see in the middle there is actually blooming, and they're very tiny. And then it gets these seeds that all the mammals enjoy. And so the native plants that evolved here, like our poor soils, our heats, our freezes, occurring rains, etc. And you should prioritize the plants native to your area. And so that was why I picked some of those plants, or most of those plants. You have clay soil, you know that, and that many of our native plants need well-drained soil, but it can still be clay, but you can work on that drainage some in your gardens. A lot of people are, I don't know how many of us are planting out in the open pasture these days. So you've got good soil, and compost and mulch are your friends. So use your compost, don't fertilize, and you want to mulch your plants to help conserve water as well. There are things you can do to help conserve water and help the plant along. And if a plant needs part shade, that means it needs afternoon sun. There's probably a few that don't, but for the most part, if you see part shade on it, that means shield it from the afternoon sun, because our afternoon suns are intense. And then afternoon sun is, just consider it full sun in Texas. So if you see a plant that wants full sun and it's getting afternoon sun, you're probably good to put it there. So establishment and water. You got to help these plants get established before they become drought tolerant. And this is, take your screenshot here, but this is based on my nursery friend at Wright's Nursery, who has I'll put a plug in for her. But Wright's Nursery, they grow a lot of native plants. They grow plants for our plant sales, which we're having coming this weekend on Saturday, but it's a long drive for you. But the plants, she says, to water daily for the first week, then every other day for 2 to 3 weeks. And after that, most plants will be established. If it's a tree, you need to water it twice a week until late fall, and then every 10 days. And you may need to water a tree for 2 to 3 years, because depending on the size of the tree you've planted, and you just have to use some judgment there. But gradually lessen the water. Don't just stop watering these plants. Even the smaller plants that aren't trees, you need to wean them off the watering schedule and let them adapt. And then once established, only as needed in our hottest months. And you don't want to overwater. The plants will grow tall and leggy and leafless, and not leafless, tall and leggy, and it will lead to root rot in a lot of plants. So you have to be aware of that, especially in your clay soil, which can stay soggy. And then these are my 2 favorite books that I use as a reference. This Native Landscaping from Wasowski. You should be familiar with that. And then also the Ricky Lennox book on range plants of north central Texas. There's a lot of overlap there. And it's also very good for looking up deer resistance. I don't know if y'all have a deer problem in your area, but he gives a lot of nitty-gritty detail and description on the plants that are very nice to have. But the Wasowski book is good because she has a landscaping slant on hers. But if you're doing any open range, Ricky Lennox is an excellent guide for that as well. But he has some information on some of the plants that aren't covered very well elsewhere. So various resources, of course, the Native Plant Society of Texas, and then the Master Naturalist and Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. I thank everyone for coming tonight, And I just couldn't sit here and present you plant after plant after plant. I find it boring, and I thought it would be more interesting to tell you about why native plants are drought resistant. And a lot of our plants that evolved here, I mean, are drought resistant. It's surprising. On our database that Tim mentioned earlier, we have 200 native plants that we recommend for the Williamson County area. And like I said, a lot of it's an overlap for you. So if you go to our website, you can look at it, the database, and you can also filter by east of I-35, and that's Blackland Prairie side. But of the 200 plants, 3/4 of them are drought tolerant. Now, some are more drought tolerant than others, and we did not make that distinction. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed everything, the presentation tonight. And it's very strange for me sitting here in my room without an audience with the feedback. I'm usually presenting live. So anyway, that's why I hesitate occasionally. So that's the end for me.
All right.
And
Well, thank you, Randy.
I'll stop
So
share. Whoops, that didn't work.
hopefully you heard that feedback.
Yeah. No, I
Okay.
didn't.
All right. Oh, well, there was some good
Okay,
feedback here in
but that's good.
McKinney. So,
Okay.
so people in the virtual audience, please go ahead and unmute and ask the question,
Yes.
or you can put it into chat, and Randy can see it that way. And then later we'll come here to McKinney for questions. But let's start with the virtual audience. Any questions?
Go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have something. Let's see.
All right, no questions yet. Anyone here have questions? So questions for Randy?
That's okay.
Here we go. Here is a question. How much do you trim? Do you trim your native plants? And if so, how much do you trim your native plants?
I do trim some of my plants, but I trim them into a natural shape. I don't turn them into meatballs or I have one picture a friend sent me, and it was two shrubs that had grown together, and they had nicely carved both halves, both shrubs, and it is the funniest picture ever. She calls it the butt bush because that's exactly what it looks like. But I do trim like white mist flower. I'll trim that back in early summer to keep it a little more compact. And I think it just looks a little prettier for me. But it's also a beautiful shrub with nice sweeping branches, so I don't want to defeat that too much. It has time to grow out again. Turk's cap, I do not cut back. My lantana, I will cut back some, but I randomly cut off long branches because it helps it to bloom again. But I do like to leave some of the seed for the bird. You have to be a little careful how much you trim because you're taking away seed for birds for the most part, and anyone else that eats the seeds. What else do I trim? Rock rose gets a little tall sometime, especially if we have a lot of spring rains. That'll get tall for me. So I may cut that back to keep it a little more in control. But overall, I just kind of naturally reach in there. Mealy blue sage is an interesting one because that gets real tall and it blooms like crazy. And what I've found is if I trim out about half of the stalks in early summer, it really does better. And then a little later, I'll trim out the other half. But, it blooms the entire time. So I leave it blooming. I leave some taller stalks that are blooming while I cut back part of the plant. And so I think you could apply that to some other plants as well, that you don't cut everything back at once, but maybe you just trim out some branches and gently cut it back over time.
Randy, there's a couple from the chat. I don't know if you can see it, or do you want me to read them to you?
Oh, pink star cap is, that's a weird one. Go to the Missouri Botanical Garden, and they have a nice discussion on Turk's cap and Pink's Turk's cap. I think Pink's Turk's cap is actually a selection of the native one, but the one they call Big Mama is so it is, the one they call Big Mama is from further south, like Mexico and such. And there are a lot of non-native Turk's caps around. So you just have to really watch the industry.
There was another question on transplanting little blue stem.
Little blue stem, I've never heard of anyone transplanting it, but it should, with the root ball it has, it seems to me like it'd be difficult. If you dig it out really small, then you might be successful at that. But it's got a really good root system, so it should transplant really well. What's not going to transplant well once it gets big is something like Turk's cap, where it has a nice big taproot. And, taproots are hard to get out. Your milkweeds will not transplant well at all because they have a big taproot and they just don't like to be disturbed. Some plants don't like to be disturbed. Anything else?
Yeah, there's another question on
White beautyberry. It is considered native, but I prefer the purple. I'll just say that. It's just much more stunning. The white is just kind of white. Fall or spring to transplant little blue stem. Well, most plants you want to let them go dormant before you transplant them. So I would say late fall, once it's gone more dormant, and then transplant it. And it will be putting down some roots through the winter and getting some rains and such. From Mobot, Missouri, someone wrote, Big Mama Turk's cap is a result of a cross between the Malvaceous Drummondii. Wait a minute. Hold on, I can't read that. And giant Turk's cap, which is Malvaceous pendiflorius, giant Turk's cap. So it is a hybrid combined with a native. It's half native. And they do that a lot, is they'll take the native plant and crossbreed it with something else in the industry. And also just don't be fooled when you see something called Dallas Red, that is native. It is not. It is the Lantana camera. So anyway,
you see and then there's a question on cutting down Indian blanket to tidy out the garden.
Well, that's a personal choice. I would leave it. It is good seed for the bird, and I believe that one also provides some nesting material. I'm not right. I don't know. I don't remember. But you don't have to mow it, but some people, it looks a little, leave it for a while at least. If it really starts looking bad or you live in an HOA, you may need to mow it. But in general, it's kind of like cutting back. You don't really want to destroy what nature put it here for. It's here to feed the animals, to feed the birds and the mammals and whatnot. And you want to leave that food on the plant, even like lantana, the little blueberries you see. Now that's been bred out of the non-native, like the new gold lantana. but sadly, because it makes it bloom more. And that's why on my Turk's cap, I just randomly cut branches off so that there's plenty of seed left and there's plenty of blooming left, but I can still sort of control it where I need to.
All right. Any other questions in the room? All right.
All right.
Randy, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
Tim. It was interesting to put this together. I
all
haven't
right.
done this exact presentation, so I had fun too.
This is Rodney. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and participating online. It was a very informative presentation. Thank you, Randy. Um, and next month is our show and tell. So I did fail to mention earlier, 2 days from now on Thursday, our Carol Clark will be giving a program here in McKinney at the Performing Arts Center in downtown McKinney on monarchs. And there's a real interesting, I think she's going to talk about it, an app that you can download to your phone. They are tagging monarchs with little transmitters, and you can track them. If they pass through your area. I was looking at my phone a while ago. We had one come in through Howell, just north of us here. So they're starting to, they were tagged up north in Kansas and somewhere up in the Northeast. And you can actually go on the map and see the butterflies flying. The one that was just tagged north of us has traveled 1,089 miles. So it's, only about maybe a tenth of its way from, completing its journey, which is kind of an amazing thing for a little butterfly. So I thank everybody, and please come back next month. Thank you.